What do you need to hear? I mean, what do you really need to hear? Stay tuned for Reach Out and Live. Welcome to Reach Out and Live, a program of music, scripture, and sermon brought to you each week by the many viewers and members of First-Plymouth Church, Lincoln, Nebraska. Hey, I'm Jim, minister at First-Plymouth, and this week we're in Psalm 46. It's a beautiful psalm. God is our strength and our refuge, a very present help in trouble. We'll worship around that psalm. There'll be beautiful music, so let's join the congregation.
The Psalms are the prayer book of the Bible. So often in my own life, when my prayers seem to be bouncing off the ceiling, or when I have no words to pray, I know I can go into these, and they become my prayer too. Today, may you hear this, and may it become yours also. God is our refuge and our strength, our ever-present help in time of trouble. Therefore, we will not fear, though the earth gives way and the mountains fall into the heart of the sea, though its waters roar and foam and the mountains quake with their surging. There's a river whose streams make glad the city of God, the holy place where the Most High dwells. God is within her. She will not fall. God will help her at break of day. Nations are in uproar. Kingdoms fall. He lifts his voice. The earth melts. The Lord Almighty is with us. The God of Jacob is our fortress. Come and see what the Lord has done, the desolations that he has brought on the earth. He makes war cease to the ends of the earth. He breaks the bow and shatters the spear. He burns the shields with fire. He says, "Be still and know that I am God. I will be exalted among the nations. I will be exalted in the earth. The Lord Almighty is with us. The God of Jacob is our fortress."
I'm not preaching about hell, but I read a short story this week that was super creepy. fairly terrifying, actually. The story went like this. There was a young couple, and they just had their first baby, and they were looking for a bigger apartment. Now, if you live in New York City like they do, finding a bigger apartment is no easy task. They wanted more space. And so the story starts with this delightful couple and their new baby. They're looking around town, and you know how hard that is. And so they end up having to settle like you do in New York. And they got this tiny little cramped apartment, better suited for hamsters, right? But they're happy. And they're in that little apartment. They make it as cozy as they possibly can. The story is beginning so lightly, even prosaically, just a couple in love, a small walk-up in New York City. But then the young mom invites a friend of hers from work to come over for dinner, and that woman's name is Stephanie. And they know Stephanie's coming over for dinner, and they're embarrassed about how tiny their apartment is, and they hadn't even purchased a dining table yet, so they rush out to IKEA, right? They buy a table, and they're putting it together as fast as they can and trying to make their apartment look nice, and Stephanie arrives, and they're apologizing for their tiny little apartment and how cramped it is, and they're just apologizing when Stephanie walks over to a little closet door. It's just a cramped closet. She opens the closet, which then suddenly becomes this beautiful terrace over gardens, this massive, beautiful terrace. You suddenly realize that this short story is in the genre of magical realism. It just had been a normal story. All of a sudden, the fantastical happens, and Stephanie opens the closet door. They all go out on this big, beautiful terrace, and they luxuriate in a night of camaraderie with their little baby, and they have space, and it's beautiful. And then Stephanie leaves at the end of the night. They go back to the closet, and they open the door, and it's just back to being a tiny little closet. So they start inviting Stephanie over a lot. And the story is all through this next year, they're inviting Stephanie, and she keeps coming, and they invite, and every time Stephanie comes over, she pulls the door handle, and there is the beautiful terrace, and it's just so sweet out there, and they love it. But as the story continues, you begin to notice something's going a little sideways with their relationship. It just sort of creeps up on you that they're bickering a little more, and they don't communicate very well. Something's starting to happen, but they love that terrace so much that they keep inviting Stephanie over. And after a while, you get this sense that Stephanie has insinuated herself somehow into their relationship, and even with the baby, and something's not feeling right. And then the story culminates. They invite Stephanie over one time more, and the husband and the child go out to the terrace, and Stephanie suddenly turns towards the young mom, filling up the doorway, gives her a strange look, then steps in and closes the door behind her. The young mom's left out on the outside. When she opens the door, it's just a closet again. She's lost her entire family. And the story ends with her curled up in the closet, weeping. I'm sorry I told you this story. It's ominous. But as I thought about it, it's clear that this is a cautionary tale about wanting more. They just wanted more space. But sometimes we can get so caught up in just always wanting more, even if it's good things. And if you're so caught up in always wanting more, you might invite unwholesome things into your life. You didn't know Stephanie was evil at the start of that story, and this story was so ominous to me because I want more. There's a lot of things I want more of. There's a lot of good things. I want more beauty in my life. I want more love in my life. I want more a lot. And I started reflecting, can you get lost in just always wanting more? Even if it's good things. If you're always after more, you're always wanting. It was the great St. Augustine who believed that the most powerful desire within you is for happiness. But he worried about that, because how would you know when you had enough happiness? You would never allow yourself to be satisfied. You'd always want more. He worried about that for us. And then he offered up the great prayer that resonates through the ages. He said, "Oh God, we are restless until we rest in Thee." He didn't mean when you die. He meant now, if you can rest in the moment and with God and know that you are enough and you have enough. Oh God, we are restless until we rest in Thee. I heard that in Psalm 46 this week. That beautiful line that you probably know well in this psalm where it says, "Be still and know that I am God." A friend of mine taught me a way to pray years ago. It's lovely. Using that line. He taught me to sit down in prayer, focus yourself in prayer, and then say that line to yourself. Be still and know that I am God. And then after a moment, begin to subtract word for word. In a moment, then say, "Be still and know that I am." And then in a few moments, say, "Be still and know." And then in a few moments, say to yourself, "Be still." And then in a few moments, say, "Be." That prayer is a gift, for we're always doing and seeking and striving, and there's nothing wrong with that. But there's a moment to embrace and be with God. Embrace it. Just be. I want to tell you a little more about Augustine. Oh, St. Augustine. He was born long ago, the year 354 AD. He'd be about 1,700 years old. And he was perhaps the third most important teacher in all of Christian history. The third most important. I would rank it, number one, he's always my number one, Jesus. And I know you don't think of him as a thinker, but what an intellect Jesus was. The way he taught was in story form. Do you know it takes a genius to teach in story form? And he was teaching about that love ethic that could transform the world. He's the number one thinker of the Christian tradition. Number two, for me, well, in our tradition, it's got to be the Apostle Paul. And how it's the Apostle Paul and those epistles that he gave to the world that described the cross and the resurrection and the risen Christ in this incredibly cosmic and personal way. Jesus, St. Paul, then St. Augustine, the third most important thinker. He frames the very magisterium of thought that we call Christianity. Let me remind you of three key ideas for Augustine. Number one was that God is within you. He began and fueled that most basic insight. If we worship an infinite God, then theologically and logically, if it's an infinite God, God is also within you. And so Christianity ever since realized that if you can go inward, you can come closer to God. If you can find some way to develop introspection and contemplation, you have direct access to God. I know we think of this God within as kind of a New Agey, hippie kind of idea, right? It's right from the greatest church father, Augustine. Go inward, my friends. You can find God. But then secondly, in Augustine, he had this powerful grasp that each person is made in the image of God. Now, when he said image of God, he didn't mean like God has arms and legs, like the image of a body. He meant that God is an infinite consciousness and you are a mind. You're a consciousness, a soul, a person. And you're made in that image of the divine. You probably have heard that Augustine taught the church primarily about original sin. You might have heard that. And there was this idea from Augustine that everybody is born sinful and that it's passed on. Adam's great sin is passed on throughout the entire human race. And you might think that was the focus, and you forget. He also was the one to forcefully teach us, you are the image of God. That's the original blessing. He taught the original blessing before he taught about original sin. And then thirdly, Augustine taught us that you will be driven, you will be determined by your desires. It's what you desire that will galvanize all of your energies. It will focus you. It will direct you. You will become what you love. And so Augustine thought that to be a Christian, the great task is to rightly order your desires. Have them in the right order. You are made to love. You are made to have many desires, but rightly order your love. And so for Augustine, the greatest desire, that you're trying to make sure that you hold this as your greatest desire, is the desire for God. And when I first studied Augustine, I couldn't understand, what is it to desire God? Like, I believe in God, and most of the time, not all the times, most of the times I feel like I really trust in God. I believe in God, I trust in God. I'm in awe of God. I mean, God, I'm in awe of it. But what is it to desire God? That one didn't connect to me. We're studying C.S. Lewis this Lent, one particular book, but it was C.S. Lewis that finally connected what it is to desire God for me. C.S. Lewis talked about how he had some longing within himself. And this longing never felt entirely attainable in this world. He couldn't really name this longing. He used a German word, Sehnsucht, which means it's some unnameable desire. You can't quite grasp it. And for C.S. Lewis, the very fact that he longed for something this world could not give meant that he was made for another world. That's what connected into a belief in the spiritual realm, in the reality of God. He knows he was made for God because what he really longs for is not really attained here. And for C.S. Lewis, Chronicles of Narnia and such, what would create that longing would be sort of these medieval scenes of beauty. Like for C.S. Lewis, if you saw a castle and rivers and beautiful forests and green grass, and it would, that kind of beauty would create this Sehnsucht in him, this longing. He said, and get this, C.S. Lewis called that longing joy. I don't get that, but it was joy. And he said, when he would read the first lines of Coleridge's great poem, Kubla Khan, it would create that longing for beauty in him. Listen to the first lines of that great poem. In Xanadu did Kubla Khan a stately pleasure dome decree, where Alf, the sacred river, ran through caverns measureless to man, down to a sunless sea, so twice 5 miles of fertile ground with walls and towers were girdled round. And there were gardens bright with sinuous rills, where blossomed many an incense-bearing tree, and here were forests ancient as the hills, enfolding sunny spots of greenery. Those words create a longing in C.S. Lewis for that beauty. That is the desire for God. This longing for beauty and truth, that feeling that C.S. Lewis is talking. Finally, it made sense to me because I felt that type of longing for something so beautiful and so true. In Psalm 46, it says, there is a river whose streams make glad the city of God. That creates Sehnsucht in me. There is this river whose streams make glad the city of God. And I desire this. That's the desire for God. So, my friends, we come to church and we're trying to rightly order our desires. This culture, our society, will always be trying to amp up your desires. It's just what it does. It's not wrong. It'll try to amp up your desires for the smallest of little delights and fun things. And it's not wrong. But you have to make sure you're rightly ordering your desires. So we come here and we put things in their right place. Remember that longing, that true longing in your heart for goodness, that desire for God. And then when you come to First-Plymouth, you'll hear us often talk about inclusion, and it sounds like we're naming an ethic or a principle of inclusion, and that we're supporting this ethic of inclusion. That's not what we're doing. We're trying to inflame a desire in you for inclusion. You will be driven by your desire. We're trying to inflame this desire that every single human being is treated with respect and dignity so that we feel like that it's a longing. That's what we're trying to inflame. It's not just a principle. We're trying to inflame in you this desire that every single human being is seen as of infinite worth and beauty and then when we think of how trans people or immigrants or how they're feeling now and how they think the world is looking at them, and then we feel this longing that every person is loved in the way they deserve. We come here and try to create those right desires within us. You come to church and you think that what the preacher is doing is teaching good morals. And there's a whole bunch of these good morals, and I'm hoping I can kind of convince you about good ethics. That's not it. Church is trying to create a desire for what is right within you. You will be driven by your desires, not by some idea you give your assent to. And so we try to spark that desire for what's right. When you come to church, I could care less what your politics are. I'm serious. I could care less what your political party is. What I care about is what you desire for our nation. Because if you desire the good things, that's what we'll work towards together. I don't care about your politics. What do you desire for our world? My friends, I am so thankful for you as fellow travelers as we gather and try to rightly order our loves. We need each other. We need God. Amen.
I think it's great that we worship together and hope it has lifted you up. Listen, you could join our services live every Sunday morning at 9, 10:30, or 11:59 on Facebook, YouTube, or our website. And all of that is made possible by people that make donations like you. If you believe that an open-minded, loving congregation can help change the world, then consider making a donation. It will help us increase the love of God and neighbor in both Nebraska and the world. Last year, First-Plymouth Church, with your help, bought and forgave over $600,000 of medical debt for struggling families. The FP Just Neighbors initiatives help with the costs of laundry at local laundromats and help fill our neighbors' gas tanks at special volunteer events. And every month, First Plymouth members help feed the neighborhood by acting as a food drop location for the Lincoln Food Bank. There are so many ways you could help us help others. If you would like to join our Sunday live streams or just learn more about our church, go to firstplymouth.org or find us on Facebook and YouTube. I was speaking today about how we relentlessly seek more of everything, but there has to be some point where we simply think, I am enough, I have enough, because then we'll reach out and live.
Tune in again next week for another edition of Reach Out and Live.